Hello there, my name is Tom Carnell. You've tuned into Carnell Knowledge here on YouTube. A show I do 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, where I review slash recommend 5 movies, a book, and 5 records. I've been doing this for a while now. I just started to do shorts, so go over and check those out. Also, if you go into the description down there, you will find links to everything. You will find links to trailer films, sometimes full movies. The movies I talk about, a link to the Amazon page where you can buy the book if it sounds interesting to you, and also full YouTube playlists of all of the records. So don't just take my word for it. Go to the link, listen to it for yourself, and decide whether it's something you want to add to your library. I was a buyer for Tower Records and Record Factory and Warehouse. I published Carpet Noctem in the 90s. Again, I wrote for Fangoria and Dread Central, and now I'm an author. You can go to my Amazon page and pick up all that stuff. I have a new book coming out pretty quick called Open Late, short story collection, and then my last book is called Monolith Records, and it's a romantic comedy set in record stores like Tower, Warehouse, that kind of thing, in the mid-'80s. So, with all that business taken care of, let's get on to today's offerings. Our first movie is from 1964. It's called OKAMI Tabuta to NINGEN, aka Wolves, Pigs, and Men. It's directed by the great Kinji Fukasaku, who I seem to be going through a renaissance and reviewing a lot of his films. He did Battle Royale. A couple of shows ago, I talked about a movie that he did called Sympathy for the Underdog, which was just fantastic. This stars the great Takagura Ken, who was in the Michael Douglas film Black Rain and a bunch of other stuff, and Shinjiro Ubara, who is in Invasion of the Neptune Men. The synopsis is about the film's about a lonely gangster recruiting men to plunder a respected and powerful gang. I'm not even going to bury the lead here. This is a fantastic Yakuza film. Kind of Yakuza, kind of a crime drama. Filmed in beautiful, beautiful black and white. I'll warn you, there's a lot of exposition before the credits roll to sort of bring everybody up to speed. But the real selling point in this one is Ken Takagura, who just is the coolest. You know, he's the kind of guy who perpetually wears sunglasses and perpetually smokes, and is just awesome. The story is about these 3 brothers who kind of represent the 3 different kinds of men. And then inexplicably, the dance numbers start and the singing starts, and I don't really get that. It seems like tonally kind of a weird shift. It does paint a less than flattering picture of post-war Japan. I'll trigger warn you right out of the box. There's a point in this film where they eat a dog, which I didn't really get. Again, some of this stuff, it just didn't add anything. But none of that, it didn't add anything to the characters. It just was something that they needed to eat, and there was a dog handy. I don't know, I doubt that they really ate a dog, but it's portrayed in the film. And I know that gets a lot of you people, so I'll warn you about it out of the box. Again, it's not really a Yakuza film. It's more of a crime drama, more of a family drama set amidst crime. But the robberies can accomplished in a very unique way. It's shot well. The film really reminded me a lot of the French New Wave, Le Cirque Rouge and Le Samurai and that kind of a thing. But the performances are all solid. The direction shows Fukasaku's mastery behind the camera. And overall, I think it's a film that, again, I do recommend it. But it's neither fish nor fowl. It has a lot of the earmarks of a Yakuza film, but it also sort of gets bogged down in a lot of this familial stuff. I do recommend it for Japanese film buffs, crime thriller enthusiasts, and Ken Takagura fans, which, put him in anything and I'll watch it. So again, Wolves, Pigs, and Men. I saw this on Tubi, by the way. So the next film, 1920. I'd never heard of this thing. It's called The Penalty, directed by Wallace Worsley, who directed the silent Hunchback of Notre Dame. Stars Charles Clary, who was in Connecticut in King Arthur's Court, Doris Pond, Jim Mason, and the great Lon Chaney. It's about a handicapped criminal who's a kind of a mastermind, and he has these elaborate plans to loot San Francisco as revenge against a doctor who he's in an accident as a child, and the doctor decides to amputate his legs. And then another doctor helps him cover it up, and that sort of spawns him, the Lon Chaney character, into becoming this criminal mastermind. This is Chaney's first starring role, and boy, does he kill it. He's just absolutely mesmerizing. The thing that's odd about this is that again, he plays a guy who has both of his legs amputated above the knee. It's not like Saving Private Ryan, where they had a lot of green screen or blue screen or whatever. He did a harness that sort of tucked his legs up underneath him. And it was a thing that he could only wear for a couple of minutes at a time. The pain was so excruciating. But man, he sells it. He sells it really, really good. There's a melancholy here. There's a palpable sense of dread and doom throughout. Like, you know from the beginning, it's not going to end well. At various times, the tinting on the silent film sort of changes from like pink to blue to clear to whatever. And it makes it all seem kind of psychedelic in a weird way. There's a lot of hellish, almost gargoylean, is that a word? Gargoylean imagery. Chaney's face is fantastic. It does get a little melodramatic. It's a silent film, so there you go. And the score sometimes seems a little counterintuitive. It can get jaunty. It can get a little light given the circumstances. I wouldn't really call this a horror film per se, but although it does feel like one. And the ending is a little surprising. It wraps up a little too neatly. There's one of those things where you go, a seed is planted early on in the proceedings, and then it comes to fruition at the very, very end. And it's an okay ending, but really the only reason to see this is Chaney's performance. You just can't take your eyes off him. It's pretty wild. So let's see, our next film, 1976, Napoli Violenta, aka Violent Naples, directed by Umberto Lenzi. I've done a couple of these Poliziotti's films, starring Maurizio Merli, who was in The Tough Ones. I reviewed The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist. John Saxon's in this again. He was also in Nightmare on Elm Street and Enter the Dragon. And Barry Sullivan is the heavy, who was in Earthquake and The Bad and the Beautiful. Talks about an uncompromising cop gets transferred to Naples on account of the city's atrocious crime levels. And he has a no-holds-barred attitude that sort of gets things done. It's the second part of the Police Commissioner Betty trilogy, being Violent Rome, Violent Naples, and a Special Cop in Action. This one is a top-drawer Poliziotti's or Italian crime drama. One of the quotes I read that I thought was really funny was that Maurizio Merli makes Dirty Harry look like a social worker. That's awesome. Almost immediately, the film hits the ground running with a lot of robbery, violence, kidnapping, that kind of a thing. But then Merli shows up and he proceeds to kick, slap, punch, and brutalize his way through the cast list, all the while barking about how the system is corrupt and no one cares. Saxon and Sullivan are given little to do until the third act, and then they earn their keep. In the end, this is one of the better Poliziotti's. Solid acting, competent directing, a fairly decent script. It's worth seeing for fans of Maurizio Merli and his lantern jaw. If you're a fan of Poliziotti's or 70s era crime film, Violent Naples is well worth checking out. A lot of these are starting to feel. The more you watch them, the more you see like there were tropes that they hit, and we'll see later in some upcoming shows. I'm going to be covering some more of these, and you'll see how that starts to take effect. Our next film from 1982, Liri Novoisi, a.k.a. Lady Piranha, a.k.a. Virgin Commandos, a.k.a. Lunatic Frog Women, directed by Sonam Lee, who did Crazy Nuts of Kung Fu. He also did Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger, and oddly, it stars Pei Chang, who was in she was the elderly woman in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She was in the great martial arts classic Come Drink With Me. It's about 6 POWs who lead an escape from a North Vietnamese prison camp, and then they join local forces to attack their oppressors. It kind of begins as a women in prison film and then mutates into a barely clothed female commando film. It was made in Taiwan. The beginning and the ending are sort of rip-roaring fun. It gets a little slow in the middle. There's a lot of training montages to bad 80s sort of action music, you know what I mean? Not a lot of it makes sense, but who cares? We didn't really come for the plot. All the girls are beautiful though and gifted. There's a sharpshooter, there's a circus knife thrower, an acrobat, a martial artist, which is convenient. How Pei Chang got involved in this, I don't really know. I had read that she had retired from film 8 years prior to doing this, and then suddenly she shows up in this thing. The plot, such as it is, unfolds conveniently and pretty ridiculously again, but let's face it, no one's here for the nuances of the plot. There are plenty of boobs, guns, and trampoline-fueled acrobatics. So yeah, is it worth watching? Sure, in a so bad it's good kind of a way. I did have fun with it. But again, go in knowing what you're going in for, and you won't be too disappointed. Our next film, 1931, Murder by the Clock, directed by Edward Sloman, stars William Stage Baird, Lillian Tashman, Irving Pichel, who was in Destination Moon and was also in Dracula's Daughter. Talks about an elderly woman who installs a horn in her crypt in case she's buried alive. Great atmosphere to this. There's a great mood. It's a very early old dark house film. The sets are pretty cool. It's a fine example of what they call pre-code filmmaking. Its film is mostly notable for Lillian Tashman and her role as the femme fatale. Performances are all solid, albeit a little stilted and stage bound. It's early on. It's 1931, so they're just making the transition from the overt sort of melodrama of the silent films. Its charm may be lost on younger viewers because of its being stilted and stage bound. But another old dark house film populated by despicable characters. One of the things I interestingly read was, again, this is the early 30s, that Lillian Tashman is alleged to have been romantically involved with Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo, and Kay Francis. Tashman died of cancer 3 years after making this film, which I found kind of sad in a way. But overall, it's a decent little spooker from Hollywood's lost age. Moving on to books, this week I'm going to be going through some things that I'm just trying to clear off some of the things that I have read on my Kindle. And the first one is Lee Murray's book, Grotesque Monster Stories. It's a collection of short stories inspired by the mythologies of Europe, China, and New Zealand. Murray's a 4-time Bram Stoker Award winner, and given that, I don't get it. This feels like a first book. It's very indulgent. Like you can tell in the reading that there are certain things that are included in some of these stories that are sort of pet interests of the authors, and those things are gone into in great depth. And then a lot of the other stuff that might serve the story a little better gets sort of short shrift. The stories are okay. It feels kind of like, the old adage, write what you know. Detailed veers from the superficial to the obsessive. All in all, in my opinion, you've undoubtedly read worse books than this, but that may not be enough to make you to go out and get it. I kept thinking, I use this term a lot, the goth girl scribblings. We used to get a lot of submissions to Carpe Noctem that were like this. Decently written, decently told, but just something about them just seemed like, as a friend of mine says, you could have used one more rewrite. and this one a Stoker, which really befuddled me. So I'm going to give it a qualified recommendation. I think it's important because it did win a Stoker, but other than that, this didn't really ring my bells. Sadly, I really wanted to like this, but it's a theme that I'm getting from a lot of Stoker Award-winning short story collections as of late. I don't get it. I don't get how they were nominated. I don't know how they won, but I haven't won shit. So who the fuck am I, right? I sense a little bitterness there, Tom. Let's see. Moving on to records. Let's start with 1981. I found this as a result of a Crate Diver video on YouTube. The band is called Holding Pattern. It's a self-titled record. Straight up, it's US prog / fusion from Connecticut. Jazz fusion, Celtic, heavy rock, synth fusion, but it sounds pretty prog to me. Enjoyable. Guitar was at the forefront. They have a second record called Breaking the Silence, which I may get to at some point. The things that this record reminded me of were bands like Camel, Happy the Man, Genesis, Sebastian Hardy, Codebell, Anyone's Daughter, Isildur's Bane, England, and a great American band that no one talks about called Yezda Urfa. Holding Pattern, did enjoy it. I would recommend it. Go to the link, check it out for yourself. Up next, from 2026, this just came out like a week ago. The band is Niall, Ashra, who's from Ashra Tempel, and someone named Enam. The album is called Ancestral Dream Horizons. This is almost new age. It's very sort of inspirational. Flute is predominant. Soaring electronics with very simple drums, and then that flute comes floating in. And this is just a lovely record. I did enjoy it very, very much. Great for early morning stuff, like you're just waking up and having your first cup of coffee. You put this on, it's going to make your day. Same thing for late at night. It's a great way to end your day. I really love this record. I've listened to it on repeat a couple times. Reminded me of things like Aeolian, Medwin Goodall, Edgar Froese, Popol Vuh, Harmonia, Gandalf, Guitaro, Hilary Stagg. That kind of stuff, just lovely. That's the word I kept thinking. I said, this is lovely. So yeah, moving on. This one I was very excited about. From 1977, a gentleman named Coste Apetrea. The album is called NYSPOLAT. And the reason why I was excited is one of my all-time favorite bands, obscure bands anyway, is a group called Samlas Mamas Mana. I've covered some of the stuff in some of their stuff here on the show. They're featured in my book Monolith Records. This is great stuff. It's very articulate and syncopated, blends a myriad of styles sort of effortlessly. Apetrea played with Jukka Tolvanen for a while, but this record feels very modern, but also feels very ethnic. And I think this guy is an unsung and underappreciated guitar player. I really am a big fan of Samlas Mamas Mana. They remind me a lot of Frank Zappa. This reminds me a lot of Frank Zappa, and very, very enjoyable. This also reminded me of people like Chris Hinz, Thomas Alfis, the band Cornet, Duncan McKay, Ragnarok. Super reminded me of Jeff Beck, some of the Blow by Blow and like Freeway Jam and all that kind of stuff. Great record, great artist. I'll undoubtedly be covering more of that in the future. Up next, from 2026, that's the release date on it, not when it came out. Joe Simon and Willie Hutch. The album is called Say You Just Love Me. I just picked this up maybe a couple of days ago before I recorded this. This is just old school soul, just a beautiful record. Very heartfelt, very deep, resonant to it. It's piano and sax accompaniment. The vocals on this are so good. Yeah, I really love this record. Heartfelt and emotive. Needless to say, I like this record a lot. Reminded me of things like Eddie Kendricks, the Dramatics, David Ruffin, LTD, Switch, that kind of thing. If you like that sort of old school soul and R&B, it's not really funk. It's more just old school crooning, soul type crooning. This is a great record. And again, go to the description and you can hear it for yourself. And then our last record, or I'm actually going to cheat on this. There's two. They're both by a group called Frankie Stein and his Ghouls. The first record from 1965 is called Monster Sounds and Dance Music. And the second record is called Monster Melodies. And again, they're both from 1965. Essentially, this is a novelty record, sort of. But underneath it all, there's a great band here. It's like pseudo surf / rockabilly. In my research, I found that they never said who was on the record. Like a lot of times they'll list, not only list the people, but or they'll refer to the, like the Wrecking Crew did a lot of stuff like this. But this features things like Dwayne Eddy, Max Greger, Sun Ra is on this supposedly. It was released on Power Records, which was a subsidiary of a children's specialty label called Peter Pan. Most of the records that you had when you were a kid were from Peter Pan. There's a mother of invention style weirdness to this, but it's really groovy, very cool. Has a lot of weird sort of spooky, spook house, haunted mansion kind of sounds to it. Chains rattling, evil laughter, screams, monster impersonation. It adds to the music. It doesn't really detract. But, you know, again, you're signing on for a weird sort of almost kids novelty record. But, man, that band is super, super good. Reminded me of things like Mr. Gasser and the Weirdos, the Invaders, Del Airs, the Phantom 5, and then, of course, Bobby Boris Pickett. And I sensed a little Los Straitjackets in there as well. That's going to do it for Monday. I'll be back on Wednesday with a whole batch of other stuff I think that you're really going to like. And again, check out those shorts. I'm going to probably be doing those one a day. Some of it is distillation of some of this stuff and some of the upcoming stuff. But I'm trying to do it in a way like I watch a movie at night, and in the morning I come in and give some quick thoughts off the cuff. So that's going to do it for me today. I hope you all have a good week. Thanks again for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please do that already. That's super helpful. Yeah, I'll see you on Wednesday. Have a good week.